On May 5, 2021, the peaceful calm of the usually uneventful ferry journey between Dalian and Yantai was shattered when someone on deck began screaming for help. The hysterical shouting was coming from one of the upper decks of the ship, with the man raising the alarm, saying his wife fell overboard. Members of the crew and police officers assigned to the ferry rushed to the scene to find the man leaning over the railings, shouting his wife's name. The distraught husband was 44-year-old restaurateur Li Yong, who police had to wrestle away from the railings, while he forlornly called out to the sea. Responding officers attempted to calm the emotional husband so he could explain what happened, while the crew members looked out to sea in efforts to spot his wife in the water. Fortunately, with Li Yong raising the alarm so quickly, and the rapid response to the cries for help, the ship hadn't put much distance between itself and the female passenger. The wife of Li Yong was quickly spotted, floating face down in the water. Time being of the essence to save 46-year-old Li Xiu Huan, crew members released a flare to mark the woman's location, with the Coast Guard already en route alerted. Officers, passengers and crew attempted to reassure Li Yong as they watched the rescue efforts from the ship's deck, but when the Coast Guard reached Li Xiu Huan, it was immediately apparent she was already deceased. Pulling her lifeless body onto the boat, the Coast Guard team attempted to resuscitate the woman, but to no avail. Once the information was confirmed, the Coast Guard headed towards port, and Li Yong was informed of his wife's tragic passing, the news making him inconsolable. With Li Yong being extremely emotional, police failed to get much information about what exactly happened. Consequently, he was allowed to go back to his cabin to process his grief and compose himself before questioning once the ferry arrived in the destination city Yantai. In the meantime, police began the investigation and started looking through footage of the ferry's more than 200 security cameras to see for themselves how Li Xiu Huan fell overboard. However, as they looked through the cameras on deck, following the couple's movements, they discovered the incident took place in one of the few blind spots not fully covered by the surveillance system. The police were still going through the security camera footage looking for something to show them how the tragedy happened when the ship reached Yantai in Shandong province, where a now calmer Li Yong was met by police and taken to be interviewed. He explained that he and Li Xiu Huan were returning to Shanghai from his Liaoning province hometown, having visited his family where he introduced Li Xiu Huan as his wife. It was the first time his relatives met Li Xiu Huan after Li Yong married her in the October of the previous year. During the return journey, instead of making the 1,800-kilometer drive south, he'd suggested they take the 1,100-kilometer route using the 7-hour ferry between Dalian and Yantai. According to Li Yong, Li Xiu Huan had previously mentioned she'd never been on a ferry before, so he suggested it as a treat. Li Yong went on to explain that despite booking a cabin for them to rest during the journey, Li Xiu Huan was far too excited and wanted to spend most of the trip out on deck. It was while she was looking out over the railings she somehow lost her footing and fell overboard, Li Yong saying everything happened so fast he couldn't clearly remember how she fell. The officers listened on sympathetically as he told the tragic story, but the mood changed when Li Yong began demanding the death certificate in his wife's body as soon as possible. He claimed it was tradition in his hometown to bury bodies 3 days after death, and he wanted to maintain the ancient practice. It wasn't so much his asking for the body and death certificate that made police suspicious, but more the continued pushing for the death to be quickly ruled as accidental, which grabbed the officers' attention. While Li Yong was being questioned, the investigation team working through the ship's surveillance camera footage also began to feel there was something strange about the situation. One thing the officers quickly noted as slightly unusual was the manner Li Yong and Li Xiu Huan walked around the ship. They rarely walked side by side, instead Li Yong walking ahead of his wife at a brisk pace with Li Xiu Huan, who appeared to suffer with a limp, struggling to keep up. There was also a moment when out on deck together, it appeared Li Xiu Huan wanted to take a photo of Li Yong, but he pushed the phone away. While it looked strange, it wasn't really suggestive of anything more than the couple perhaps having an argument, and Li Yong being in a bad mood as a result. However, investigators eventually managed to find footage leading them to believe Li Xiu Huan didn't fall. A camera located on the ship's bow caught the fall from a distance, but still gave investigators a clear view of the supposed accident, and what they saw made them immediately suspect they were no longer dealing with an extremely tragic accident, but rather a homicide case. While they couldn't say for certain how someone's body would move in the air while falling from the ship, the images of Li Xiu Huan somersaulting on her way down to the water made it appear she'd been propelled off the ship rather than just slipping or losing her balance. Zooming in on the footage made it somewhat grainy, distorting the view, but investigators were sure someone, most likely Li Yong, had thrown her overboard. She first appears seemingly doubled up over the railings, her head coming into view from behind lifeboats obstructing the camera. She then goes overboard headfirst, as if her legs were being lifted, and she immediately flipped in the air. Now they had images of the actual fall. Investigators went back through more footage, and Li Yong only appeared more suspicious. After boarding the ship, the couple went straight to their cabin. Li Yong was seen leaving the room alone shortly after, and walked around the ship's deck, ultimately entering an area for crew only, and disappeared off camera. The area warning passengers to keep out wasn't covered by surveillance cameras, and was the same place where Li Xiu Huan supposedly fell overboard. The more the investigation advanced, the more the evidence continued to stack up against Li Yong. The medical examination of the victim suggested the reason Li Yong wanted the body immediately handed over to him was likely for purposes other than local burial traditions. The doctor noted several injuries to the deceased's face, which possibly could have been caused by her impacting the water, but in their expert opinion were much more consistent with being struck in the face by a fist. More concerning were marks to the victim's neck, suggesting she'd been choked, and definitely wouldn't have been caused by her hitting the water. Ultimately, it was determined the cause of death was drowning, but also that the cuts and bruises to the victim's face and neck were inflicted prior to her passing. In the images of Li Xiu Huan caught by the ship's surveillance system while she walked around the ferry, she didn't appear to have any marks to her face, meaning they could only have occurred just before she either fell or was pushed, with police believing the latter was more likely. With the evidence pointing to Li Yong having ended the life of Li Xiu Huan, the investigation team didn't rush to put the accusation and evidence in front of him. Without being able to see what took place in the moments just prior to Li Xiu Huan ending up in the water, the police felt that Li Yong could simply claim the pair had an argument, and in an extremely emotional state, Li Xiu Huan chose to jump off the ferry. The belief wasn't without precedent. There have been multiple cases over the years of couples getting into an argument in public places, which resulted with one of the participants taking drastic action. More commonly, incidents such as this take place in shopping malls, with people jumping off the higher floors after being pushed to an emotional breaking point. The investigation team wanted a motive they could put to Li Yong when they eventually confronted him with their suspicions about what happened. From what little they already knew about Li Yong, no realistic reason for him wanting to end the life of Li Xiu Huan was immediately apparent. He graduated from one of the top 10 universities in China, and by all accounts was running an extremely popular restaurant in the heart of Shanghai. Digging deeper into his past, police discovered 2 criminal convictions, one for theft in 2004, and another for identity theft in 2012, resulting with him serving 3-year prison sentences both times. However, since his second stint in prison, his record was clean and he appeared to have genuinely turned his life around. The couple didn't appear to be a natural match, with Li Yong being an educated, successful business owner who'd never previously married and had no children, whereas the older Li Xiu Huan had 2 failed marriages and 2 children stemming from the past relationships. An initial thought was the possibility he wanted to get divorced, and with him having the most money in the relationship, he was concerned he'd lose a proportion of his wealth. But with the couple marrying only 7 months prior, and Li Yong just having introduced Li Xiu Huan to the rest of his family, divorce seemed an unrealistic motive. Consequently, the investigation team began attempting to learn more about Li Yong and Li Xiu Huan and their relationship. Under the guise of carrying out a full investigation to confirm the death was indeed accidental as Li Yong claimed, officers were sent to speak with the families of Li Yong and Li Xiu Huan in the provinces of Liaoning and Anhui, along with interviewing employees of the restaurant in Shanghai. The family of Li Yong claimed they had no idea he'd gotten married until he arrived at the family home with his wife in tow. Li Yong never previously mentioned to them anything about being in an intimate relationship, and had never spoken about Li Xiu Huan before, leaving them shocked when he turned up with a wife. The relatives of Li Yong reportedly stated they found Li Xiu Huan to be pleasant enough, but were also somewhat surprised Li Yong chose her to be the woman he'd finally marry. They felt the couple weren't especially well suited, but Li Yong seemed happy, so they just put it down to opposites attract. During the visit there were no obvious signs of any issues between the couple, family members never hearing any arguments between the two, and both spoke about how happy they were together. The family of Li Xiu Huan in Anhui were still unaware she'd married when police came to speak with them. According to her father, she never mentioned being in a romantic relationship, leaving them shocked to hear she'd remarried. Interviewing the family, the investigation team were able to get more background information about Li Xiu Huan, which only made the marriage seem more unlikely. She dropped out of education after only the second year of elementary school, and helped her parents work their farmland until she was 18, when she went out to find employment in the Anhui province city Anqing. There she found work in a small restaurant as a dishwasher, where the boss refused to let her use hot water in order to save money. In 1997, she married a man from a village neighboring her hometown, with whom she had a son. Unfortunately, the marriage was not a happy union. Moving into her husband's family home, Li Xiu Huan frequently found herself in conflict with her mother-in-law. After one especially furious argument, her husband beat her for daring to raise her voice to his mother, which led to the couple divorcing, and Li Xiu Huan losing custody of their son as she failed to show the ability to provide for the child financially. Li Xiu Huan then moved to Hefei City, 170 kilometers to the north of Anqing, where she found more menial employment, and in 2004, married again. This time she gave birth to a daughter, but again the marriage wasn't a happy one. Her new husband constantly cheated on her, eventually leading to the marriage breaking up, and again Li Xiu Huan losing custody of the child. Over the subsequent decade she moved around different cities across Anhui province, taking on whatever employment she could find, usually working in restaurants as a dishwasher and cleaner. In 2015 she traveled to Shanghai to meet someone another person from her hometown felt was a good potential husband for her. Being over 30 with 2 estranged children and 2 failed marriages, Li Xiu Huan struggled to find men willing to marry her, and when she met the potential match she discovered he was 60 years old, twice her age. Rejecting the man for being too old, she decided to remain in Shanghai, where she would eventually find employment at the restaurant owned by Li Yong. Her colleagues at the restaurant told police a similar story as the couple's families, saying they were completely unaware their boss married Li Xiu Huan. Most colleagues of Li Xiu Huan said she'd been working at the restaurant for around 5 years, and during the time they never noticed any close relationship between her and the boss. While she was supposedly employed as a waitress, in reality she was more of a dishwasher and cleaner, and it was said that she was essentially illiterate, barely able to read and write. Not the most obvious match for someone who graduated from a top 10 university. A female staff member who regularly worked alongside Li Xiu Huan however told officers that Li Yong had begun paying more attention to Li Xiu Huan over the course of the previous year, spending more time in the restaurant backrooms and often stopping to chat with Li Xiu Huan. The employees also found the marriage surprising as they described Li Yong as someone for whom image was extremely important. He was rarely seen dressed in anything other than a suit, and gave off the appearance of being a professional, successful businessman at all times. Li Xiu Huan was the last person any of them expected would be someone the boss would marry, with her not fitting the more stereotypical profile of the type of woman a businessman like Li Yong would go for, especially in an image-conscious city like Shanghai. It appeared from the various interviews that Li Yong had attempted to keep the relationship secret from virtually everyone who knew them, and the marriage only became stranger the deeper the police looked into the couple. Speaking with neighbors of Li Yong, the investigation team found that people living in the same apartment building were under the impression Li Xiu Huan worked for Li Yong as an ai, the term literally meaning auntie, but is also used to describe an older woman hired to perform household chores, similar to a maid. The neighbors claimed that as far as they knew, Li Yong had a girlfriend who was obviously much younger than him, and lived in the apartment. The alleged girlfriend, a 19-year-old college student, was tracked down and informed officers she had been engaging in an intimate relationship with Li Yong for several months. She claimed she frequently stayed at the home of Li Yong, but seemed to be completely unaware Li Xiu Huan, who also lived in the apartment, was her boyfriend's wife. Li Yong had introduced Li Xiu Huan as his domestic worker, and apparently told his student girlfriend the older woman was somewhat eccentric, and jokingly called him her husband. The young woman added that when she was there, Li Xiu Huan just stayed in her own bedroom in the apartment. It was now clear to officers that the marriage was completely bogus, and evidence found in the family home of Li Yong soon gave investigators the most likely reason for his actions. Several life insurance policies taken out on Li Xiu Huan were discovered hidden around his childhood bedroom, with them paying out significantly more if Li Xiu Huan passed in an accident, such as falling off a ferry. The total combined potential payout for an accidental death was over 12 million yuan, around 1.7 million USD. Further investigation after the discovery of the life insurance policies gave police evidence that it wasn't just the marriage that was a sham, but also the successful businessman persona Li Yong presented to others. He was discovered to have debts totaling well over 1 million yuan, and the amount he owed was growing significantly by the day. This included owing hundreds of thousands to various family members, credit card debt totaling 500,000 yuan, 71,000 USD, along with owing money to suppliers for the business. He was also in arrears with paying his employees, who told officers their salaries often got paid late, and recently some hadn't received payment for months. In the June of 2021, both the son and older brother of Li Xiu Huan contacted the investigation team independent of each other, but with very similar stories. With the investigation ongoing, the body of Li Xiu Huan had yet to be released to the family, in case further examination of the victim was required. Never having spoken to them before, Li Yong out of the blue contacted both men to talk about the issue. The son of Li Xiu Huan, who never had a close relationship with his mother thanks to the divorce and spending his childhood with his father, informed officers Li Yong had contacted him and tried to get him to pressure the police into releasing the body to him. Li Yong claimed he wanted the body cremated quickly because of a local tradition, and informed the son he had an insurance policy which would be paid once the passing was confirmed accidental. Li Yong told the son of Li Xiu Huan if he helped, he'd be able to give him 600,000 yuan, 85,000 USD as reward. The son rejected the offer, and this seemingly made Li Yong turn to other family members, contacting the older brother of Li Xiu Huan, only this time offering 3 million yuan, around 430,000 USD. The brother also refused, and the desperation displayed by Li Yong, along with it being the first time he ever attempted to speak to them, made both men suspicious, so they contacted the police. The investigation team now had a theory which pointed to the demise of Li Xiu Huan being an intentional and carefully premeditated homicide. With debts mounting and continuing to grow thanks to him missing payments on the credit card bills, and it looking like he was going to lose his business, Li Yong was desperate. Then seeing his middle-aged twice-divorced dishwasher, whom he'd previously paid little attention to, he formulated a plan to make his financial problems vanish. Making the presumption that an offer of marriage coming from someone like him was one she couldn't turn down, he began paying more attention to her, going out of his way to flirt with her while she worked. The investigation team also believed he picked out Li Xiu Huan to shield him from suspicion, gambling that her being much lower in terms of social status, police wouldn't see any reason he'd want to end her life, as there was no obvious benefit for him. When he finally proposed, likely after an extremely brief romance, she gladly accepted the offer, and the pair officially got their marriage certificate, October 23, 2020. He spent the next few months taking out multiple life insurance policies on his new bride with different companies. Police believed he planned for the accident to take place on the Yantai ferry, as he was familiar with the journey, having taken it several times when traveling between Shanghai and his hometown. Taking Li Xiu Huan to meet his family was little more than an effort to remove possible future suspicion by playing the role of the happily married husband. Then on the way back to Shanghai with alibis to tell police they didn't see any problems with the marriage, he took the opportunity to push his wife from the ship. Not wanting to take any chances with her grabbing him, potentially scratching him, or even worse pulling him over with her, he beat Li Xiu Huan before choking her to the point of unconsciousness, then threw her over the railings. The investigation team decided they now had enough to criminally detain the suspect and put the evidence to him. Going to his home and place of business, they found no sign of Li Yong, but discovered he'd checked into a cheap hotel. When police went to the hotel and walked into the room booked by Li Yong, they caught him quite literally, with his trousers down. In rather awkward scenes, police found Li Yong sat in bed, naked from the waist down, waiting for some female company he'd paid for. Once fully dressed and sitting in the police station's interrogation room, Li Yong denied any involvement in Li Xiu Huan falling from the ferry. Asked the reason he and Li Xiu Huan went into an area of the ferry warning passengers to keep out, he claimed Li Xiu Huan wanted a better view out to sea, and the railings in that area were lower, allowing her to look out further. Li Yong now told officers with time passing and his being less emotionally distraught, he was able to remember the fall much more clearly. He explained Li Xiu Huan simply got overexcited, then stood on the lower bar of the railings to lean out further. However, before he had the chance to warn her it was dangerous, she leant too far and fell. He flatly denied the interrogating officer's claim that he actually lifted her over the railing after beating and choking her. When the officers questioned him about the various life insurance policies, Li Yong had answers for that too. He responded saying that Li Xiu Huan often rode an electric bike, but he felt she was an especially careless rider, so concerned she may get into an accident he took out the policies in case something happened to her. The longer the interrogation went on, the more it became clear Li Yong was simply going to refuse to confess, so eventually police charged him with the intentional homicide of Li Xiu Huan, leaving it to the courts to decide if he was guilty or not. 1 year after his arrest, in the July of 2022, Li Yong faced trial for the intentional homicide of Li Xiu Huan. Li Yong continued to plead innocence, but the prosecution had more evidence to offer which said otherwise. The video of the incident was painstakingly examined by forensic analysts during the intervening months, and they found evidence pointing to someone helping Li Xiu Huan over the railings. Crucially, they found a split second of footage where a thin black item came into view as Li Xiu Huan went over, with the experts believing this was the suited arm of Li Yong guiding her over the railings. The defense team representing Li Yong had little to offer other than their client's denials, and had no explanation for the cuts and bruises to the face of the victim, or the marks on her neck. Ultimately, Li Yong was found guilty and sentenced to death. However, perhaps predictably, he stated his intention to appeal the punishment. The appeal was heard in the December of 2023, but with no new evidence to offer, the original verdict was upheld, and on August 4, 2025, Li Yong was executed for the intentional homicide of Li Xiu Huan. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. And hope to see you again for the next dark tale from the Middle Kingdom.